In this debate, David made it clear that multinationals, so the example he used was Google, had observed the letter of the law and paid the amount that was owed to HMRC. This is what he had to say.
I don't think anybody who really understands what was going on thinks Google was avoiding tax, was paying tax in accordance with the law in this country, just as it should have done. And let me say that the amount of tax on which they paid, the amount of profit on which they paid tax was commercially the right amount. What is going on at the moment is a pretense that companies are earning more within the jurisdiction that is seeking to tax than they actually are. It's deception on the public. The idea that Google was avoiding tax is fantasy land.
So, is David showing a tin ear here to public opinion for consumer-facing companies in particular? Dan, let me put that to you. Do you think he is?
Well, put it this way. Whenever you have a story these days about a company accused of avoiding tax, if that story ends with a quote from the company's PR people saying X and Y company has complied with the letter of the law in all the territories in which it operates, does that end the story? No, people laugh. It's not a defence which flies anymore.
Are we moving on to new territory where it's no longer acceptable for companies to just obey the law, but really need to be seen to acting for the public good?
That may be putting it too strong, but if you're acting in a way which you think just about complies with the letter of the law, you are asking for trouble. You're asking for a degree of public scrutiny you probably don't want. You're asking for changes of law targeting you. You're asking for tax authorities to challenge you. Most companies don't want that to be their existence. They are not set up to spend their time fighting tax disputes. They want to actually do business.
Is there evidence, either of you, that companies are indeed, in fact, taking less efficient routes?
I think there is. There's a fairly recent survey within the Financial Times that covered this, actually. It looked at filings of US companies to the SEC. Now, there's a dramatic rise, I think over 100% rise in the number of companies who are flagging tax risk in their accounts. Not to the point they're saying we're going to pay more tax in the future. That's kind of a given looking at some of the structure. But actually they're going to pay more tax retrospectively as well. So they're going to go back, look at the accounts, look at the structure and say, actually, perhaps we could take a slightly different view of this one. So it's already changed commercial behaviour. And I think you'll see these companies seeing that effectively as the price of doing business now. The efficient tax structure was the past, now it's the call of public opinion. And that's rather stricter, I think, than the authorities.
You agree with that?
Yeah, I completely agree.
What is driving this globally?
What's driving it? Well, it's a confluence of events. One is the financial crisis and the lack of sympathy that engendered in the public and media towards large business. Partly it's the stream of revelations about structures by people like Google, like Apple, like Starbucks. Then it's the actions taken against that. You had the G20 and the OECD coming out with the BEPS proposals which reshape the rules of international tax. All of that happening at once, and something's got to give. And what's giving are really the norms on which companies have built a lot of their behaviour over the last 30 years.
And I'll throw one more thing into that as well. I agree with all of those points, absolutely. The final point you make on that one actually is that governments can do this now. Right, there's been a huge technology shift over the last 3 to 4 years, particularly around tax, particularly how they gather tax information. So well, it's not just a return, there's a whole bunch of supporting documentation. There's the ability to take that electronically and the ability through the OECD largely to look at that cross-border. So governments are now armed. They're kind of ahead in this arms race because they have much more data on tax than they ever used to before. And companies don't have that.
Yeah.
I'm going to be boring and agree strongly with Laurence there. So BEPS, 15 sets of proposals, many of which are mind-numbingly technically complex. The one that will have the biggest impact of all is country-by-country reporting, as Laurence just described. So tax authorities, instead of seeing this small part of the world that happens to touch their country, will suddenly see the global picture. And if you're in Italy, say, you'll suddenly become aware that there's this company in Luxembourg making a lot more profit on which it pays tax than the Italian subsidiary does. And you may well think, I'll have a piece of that, please. And the behaviour that will drive on the part of tax authorities may create a whole new level beyond what we've been seeing in the past few years.
All right. I've got to stop it there. Dan, Laurence, thank you very much indeed.